Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto What If Fanfic 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was betrayed by his family and abandoned Konoha. Part 2. The sun peeked through the shades of Naruto's room, the rays settling on his face. Naruto tried to keep his eyes closed, but it was all for naught, as he reluctantly left his peaceful slumber. He pushed himself up and surveyed his surroundings. He was in a small apartment, complete with a bedroom, kitchen, living room, and bath. The coloring was modest and even, and the tables and chairs did not have a speck of dust on them. Naruto moved his focus to a small nightstand. 6:30, Naruto thought as he groggily rose from bed, 2 whole hours until the academy starts. Seeing that he was not going back to sleep anytime soon, Naruto rose from his bed, and stumbled into the bathroom. He had just set the shower to the perfect temperature, and was about to step in, when he heard the heavy snores coming from inside his head. Prankster side kicking in, Naruto blasted the water temperature to the coldest it could go. Bracing himself, he entered the spray of icy water. Cold, Kyuubi screamed, woken from his slumber by the feeling of ice-cold water all over his body. Naruto gave a tired chuckle, then quickly returned the water to its previous temp, to enjoy his shower. "You," said Kyuubi, clearly not happy about the manner in which he had woken up. "I'm not apologizing," thought Naruto back to the fox, "that was the most fun I have had in a while. I will get revenge, starting now," said Kyuubi as he started to send an image of when Naruto had caught Raki and an escort together. The thought of Araki instantly widened Naruto's eyes in horror. "My eyes. Oh dear Kami, my eyes are burning," he screamed, covering his face with his hands. Kyuubi laughed at his container's reaction. "Just remember, you deserved that one." When Naruto had recovered, he proceeded to wonder about his first day at the academy. From the people he had met so far, Samui and Omoi seemed to be trustworthy people, and good shinobi in training. However, their opinions on his other classmates were interesting to say the least, especially the 2 apprentices in Jinchuriki. Raki had never said that much about his teammates. Whenever the question was brought up, he would ignore it, bring up a new subject, or, if he had any, throw some sharp kunai at Naruto. Naruto had learned very quickly that this was a sore subject for him. The only thing he had been able to learn about them was that Takashi was a golden, and that Chiasso was a beautiful brute, but other than that, Raki was silent about them. Naruto respected his choice to not want to talk about them, just like Raki respected Naruto's wish to not talk about his life in Konoha. Naruto's eyes dimmed a bit. He had tried to keep all thoughts of Konoha out of his head, excluding Jiji and the Ichirakus of course. When it came to the villagers, Naruto felt irritated. Not angry or filled with rage, just irritated, like it was a small bug that would never leave you alone. Naruto knew that his heritage did not come from Konoha. He was an Uzumaki, a survivor of a once powerful clan. A clan so powerful that it had its own hidden village, Uzushiogakure, best known for their Fuin Jutsu skills and their notoriously long lives. Though Naruto knew of his clan's ties to Konoha, he had long since decided that that was his past, and that Kumo was his future. Naruto soon was snapped out of his train of thought when he realized that he had been in the shower for close to 45 minutes. He turned off the water and began to start his daily routine. When Naruto had exited the bathroom, he quickly made some instant ramen and did some stretches while waiting. When the ramen was done, Naruto wolfed it down, and then proceeded to make 3 more cups, which were eaten at similar speeds. As Naruto was about to leave his room, he noticed a small letter on the counter. He went over to examine it, only to find the word Kit written on it. Curious, Naruto opened the letter to see why his master had written him, other than just coming to talk. "Kit, sorry I can't do this personally, but if the villagers found out that I was teaching you, they would go ballistic. If you haven't already found out, the council, in all its glory, tried to push an apprentice on me a couple of years ago. The choices I had were shitty to none, so I hightailed it out of there. I eventually met you and took you under my wing, but people will not take kindly to a kid from another village being the apprentice to one of the Sennin. So, here on out, I need you to continue training whenever you can. Just do your warm-ups and try to master some of the simpler jutsus you know without hand signs. I don't really care what you do in the academy, but for Kami's sakes, make some friends. You really need to know people your own age group. And who knows, you might even find a stunning young girl to play with. Raki drew himself, giving a pervy grin. The same rules apply from what I told you yesterday, and only summon if you need to. Yane. Raki. P.S. You need to come meet the Raikage when classes are over. P.P.S. Don't prank your teacher too badly, we need them, sort of. P.P.P.S. The store to the right of the inn you are staying at serves the best tea in the mornings. Naruto sighed and burned the note with a simple Kaden jutsu. I have a feeling this is going to be a boring year, he thought to himself as he locked the door to his room and walked off to find the store Raki had told him about. Yugito gave a loud yawn, so tired. She whined as she moved to lay on a row of desks. Samui sighed. I bet you are, after you spent all night trying to break into Naoki's house for one of your revenge pranks. Why did you even try when you know that his clan's compound is one of the most secure in the village? Yugito, Samui, Omoi and Karui were sitting around a row of desks in the upper right corner of the class near the window. Omoi and Samui wore the same clothes they did the day before. Yugito had fair skin, long, braided blonde hair, like Samui's, and a pair of cat-like, black eyes. She had small cups that were concealed under a short-sleeved purple and black blouse. She had on black ninja pants with cloud outlines on the bottom and purple fingerless gloves. Her arms were covered with ninja tape and also a red belt around her waist. Karui had dark skin with red hair and amber eyes and yellow earrings and a white bandana that kept her hair down. She wore a similar uniform to Samui, but hers had frills on the neck and she had thigh-high boots. We got past the first wall, protested Karui, as she struggled to keep her head up. If Cat Eyes here didn't attract the smell of the guard dogs, that bastard would have woken up completely hairless. Yugito shot Karui a quick glare before turning back to Samui. Though it's not like you would ever see the shit he does, she said in an irritated tone. That jerk wouldn't harm a fly if Samui was there to watch him. Samui had been the apple of Naoki's affection since the second year of the academy. She was one of the most level-headed girls in the class, and also not one of his many fangirls. It seemed that Naoki liked a challenge. Yugito was actually a bit jealous of Samui in that aspect. Sure, Samui had always turned down any date thrown at her, but at least she was getting asked. No one wanted to even come close to Yugito because of her Jinchuriki status, and those who did only wanted to be the first to claim the demon bitch. Ah, cheer up kitten, said Nibby, the two-tailed beast, there must be a man out there who will look past what you are. And if not, having mind-blowing with anyone you want is not a sad lifestyle. I remember when I got with these four. Nibby, interrupted Yugito, as she tried to make the blush on her face recede. She looked at her friends and noticed that Samui seemed to be searching for someone. Who are you looking for? Yugito asked. Samui stiffened. No one, she curtly responded. She is probably looking for Naruto. Omoi had started to say but was cut off when Samui hit him over the head. This piqued Yugito's interests even further. Who's Naruto? Omoi rubbed the new lump on his head. He is a kid we met while you two were trying to prank Naoki. He said he was joining the academy today. Yugito and Karui looked over at Samui, who was glaring at Omoi. They both got a teasing grin on their faces. Oh, does Samui have a crush on the new kid? Yugito said with a grin. I think so, and I thought she just shot everyone else down because she played for the other team, added Karui with a giggle. Samui looked away and pointed her nose high with a snort, but a light blush was present. I do not have a crush on Naruto-san. Omoi, who had popped another sucker into his mouth, had a puzzled expression on his face. Then why did you blush when you saw Naruto without his mask? This time Omoi had to dodge a couple of kunai that skimmed the top of his hair. Yugito and Karui wore gob-smacked expressions. Are you serious? Yugito finally asked, are we talking about the same person here or am I losing my hearing? Cause I think you just said Samui blushed at a boy. Omoi nodded. I was as surprised as you. This got Yugito thinking, hey Nibi, why don't we get that mask off of the Naruto kid so we can see what your stoic friend saw? Absolutely kitten. I am so glad my devious side had rubbed off on you, said Nibi, who was giving her container a cat-like grin. Just as Yugito started to plan mission, unmask Samui's crush, Osamu-sensei walked in to begin the lesson. About an hour into the lecture, Yugito had almost fallen asleep when the class heard a knock at the door. Osamu paused, and walked to open the door. Standing there was Naruto wearing his mask, rubbing the back of his sheepishly, while holding a cup of tea. I'm late, right? He asked. Osamu was perplexed. Yes, you must be the new student starting today. What were you doing that made you an entire hour late? Naruto just raised up the cup of tea. It's really good, I had to get a couple of cups. A few of the class giggled and Osamu gave an annoyed sigh. Alright, well let's hope that this does not become a daily occurrence. Go and introduce yourself to the class. Naruto nodded then walked up to the center of the room. Hey, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, training, and this tea. He took a sip. How is this so good? He asked himself. Lots of the students got a large teardrop on their foreheads. Is he really that stupid? Most of the class asked themselves. Only Samui and Omoi knew that he was masking his true strength, while Yugito made a note to find out where he got the tea. Very well Naruto. Go sit next to Omoi. Naruto nodded and moved up the stairs and took his place by Omoi, who he greeted with a fist bump. Yugito was currently observing the new student. He looks good from here kitten, said Nibi. Nice bright, shining eyes. Samui likes him so you know he is strong. Osamu-sensei had taken a seat at his desk, only to stand up later with the seat glued to his rear, making the class to laugh, and a prankster to boot. Oh, I just know you are made for each other kitten. Why don't you ditch class so you can take him to your room to ride his, Nibi? Screamed Yugito at her demon, using all of her willpower to keep a blush down. After Osamu, with the help of some students, gotten the seat off of his pants, continued his lecture from where it had been interrupted, which both Naruto and Yugito slept through. The bell finally rang, signifying the break. As the class entered the school grounds, which was covered with dirt except for some trees near the corners of the buildings, Naruto went off to find Samui and Omoi. He finally found them along with a red head and another blonde, relaxing around an enclave of rocks. He walked up and smiled under his mask, as he waved to Samui. Yugito was sitting on top of one of the rocks and Samui, Karui and Omoi were leaning against some of the smaller rocks. Hello Naruto-san. Samui was the first to acknowledge his presence. He gave her an eye smile. Hello Sami-chan, how have you been? Yugito snickered at Samui's nickname while Samui was slightly glaring at Naruto. When did I give you permission to call me that? She less asked more demanded. Naruto just kept eye smiling at her. 1. You gave me the nickname, Naruto-san, when I asked you to call me Naruto, so I am just giving you a nickname in return. 2. Sami-chan, is just so easy to say, and 3. The face to make is adorable when I call you it. Samui was about to throw one of the rocks at him when she heard the first 2 reasons, but when she heard the third, she went wide-eyed and a small blush appeared on her face. She tried to come up with a retort, but her brain had shut down for a bit, so all she did was stand there. Yugito was watching the scene play out and decided to make her presence known. Now that is impressive, she said as she hopped off the boulder. Getting Samui to blush once is an accomplishment, twice as legendary. Naruto tilted his head slightly in confusion. Both Yugito and Samui had to hold in a scream of kawaii, but Nibi didn't. Kawaii, that is adorable. Grab him kitten, before your friend notices he is gone. Yugito ignored Nibi for the moment and put out her hand. I'm Yugito, the redhead is Karui, who nodded at Naruto, and I am guessing you already know Omoi and Sami-chan. She had purposely put Samui's new nickname in for her own enjoyment as the other blonde girl, now recovered, shot her a deathly glare. Naruto smiled at her and grasped her hand in a shake. Uzumaki Naruto, but just call me Naruto. Yugito smiled. What's with the mask? She asked. Got something you need to hide under there? Naruto's eyes seemed to twinkle with mischief. I'll tell you what I told Omoi and Samui. It's for personal protection. Yugito gave him the puppy, or in her case, kitty cat eyes. They seemed to glow with sadness, but Samui and Omoi both got to see, she said in a cute voice. Naruto was having trouble focusing on anything else but her eyes. She looks so sad, he thought, as his hand twitched towards his mask. Don't do it, Kit, yelled Kyuubi. I am sure this is Nibi now. If you let her get to you, soon everything you hold near and dear will be hers for the taking. I made the same mistake that you are about to make, so please for love of Kami, resist. Kyuubi's rant seemed to snap Naruto out of the trance and just shook his head. I am sorry Yugito-san, but they used it as payment for telling me about the academy. I cannot show you. Good Kit, good. Now just keep it up, urged the Kyuubi. Yugito's eyes began to slightly water, causing Naruto's resolve to weaken. No, don't cry, yet, I cannot show you yet, he quickly said, not wanting to make the girl cry, it was one of his weaknesses. You're hopeless, sighed the Kyuubi from his cage. Yugito's expression changed instantly, from brink of tears, to wildly grinning. Great, so when is, yet? She asked. Thinking quickly, Naruto began to do what any great man would do when caught in a position like this, tell half the truth. Well, you see, if people knew my true identity, it could cause a lot of unwanted problems. So I need to be sure only a select few know, he said. It was not like he was lying. If Konoha did find out he was alive, and in Kumo, they would with no doubt send an army to capture or kill him. Nice save, Kit, said Kyuubi. Really? No, I was being sarcastic. Even though Yugito was smiling on the outside, she was irked on the inside. Why didn't that work? She thought. I have used that move on Karabi-sensei and Aoji hundreds of times, and it has worked perfectly. I don't know what happened, kitten, added Nibi. I have used my technique for much greater things than that. Either he has heard of it before, which I find hard to believe, or what he says is true, that this is very important. But that only makes me want to know more. After Yugito finished scheming with Nibi, she continued to act as if nothing was wrong. Oh, you are so easy. She got in close. Having you around is going to be fun, and also you can Samui blush, which is a bonus. Naruto slowly nodded, still a bit confused about some of what Yugito had said. What does she mean, making Sami-chan blush? He thought. In his cage, Kyuubi banged his head against the bars, cursing Kami for giving him such an oblivious container. Anyway, said Samui, who was still a bit pissed about the Sami-chan comment, what do you think of the class, Naruto? It's really nice, Sami-chan, electing a smirk from Yugito and a scowl from Samui. The students seem fine if you don't mess with them. The teacher is smart but gullible, meaning lots of fun pranks in the future, and he doesn't seem to care if I come in late. He was about to continue, but a rock flew past his face, skimming the cloth of his mask. The group turned to see two figures, one boy and one girl, standing a few feet away. The boy had light-toned skin, with messy brown hair, and dull brown eyes. He wore a miniature Kumo Anbu get-up, with the only exception being that all of the armor had the faintest color of red. The girl was, in Naruto's opinion, quite beautiful. She had captivating red eyes, black hair that reached down her back, and a small deceptive smile. Her outfit consisted of white shinobi-style pants, a sleeveless crimson tank top, with one tan shawls moving across her waist, and on her left arm was a fishnet glove. As soon as the two arrived, the mood instantly changed. Samui gave them a slight glare. Omoi had moved into a fighting stance, and Karui and Yugito were growling and looking like they were about to tear the kids to shreds. The two sides did not move or speak a word for 2 whole minutes, so Naruto decided to break the tension. You know, it is appropriate to know the names of the people throwing rocks at you, he said with an eyes smile. The girl gave a smirk. Well, how thoughtful, and here I thought that you had no class for hanging out around them. My name is Sango Yuriko, apprentice of the Neko Sennin, and my handsome friend here is Minoru Naoki, apprentice of the Ukami Sennin, who just gave a bored stare at the blonde boy. Naruto gave a small wave. Uzumaki Naruto, so what are you two doing? Probably Yuriko Shofu been following Naoki Tem with hopes of pencil asking her out, yelled Yugito. Yuriko scowled but then quickly brought it back to a smirk. Ah, Neko no Mi, trying to keep your new friend. As soon as he finds out what you are, he will leave, like all the rest. Yugito flinched, but stood her ground. Yuriko turned back to Naruto. Do you know Naruto-kun, your little friend here is the Nibi no Nekomata, a giant, fire-breathing cat who is bent on death and destruction. Why hang out with Neko no Mi and her low-class friends, when you can be with normal people like us? Naruto turned to look at Yugito, who flinched under his gaze. Karui, Samui, and Omoi all waited for his answer, but he just kept observing Yugito. After 2 minutes, he looked back. She doesn't look like a cat. Yugito breathed a sigh of relief, and Nibi smiled. See kitten, I told you there were people out there who could see the truth. And another good thing is that he is not bad looking either. Samui, Omoi, and Karui, seeing that Naruto was not a threat to their friend, moved their gaze back to Yuriko and Naoki, who looked surprised to say the least. The only thing that looks cat-like one Yugito are her eyes, and they look pretty cute, Naruto continued, causing Yugito to blush. And above all, he said as he narrowed his eyes, if you say she is the Nibi, you must not be very smart. When we seal a kunai into a scroll, does the scroll become a kunai? No, it does not, meaning that Yugito is the container rather than the beast. Yuriko, who had recovered, was glaring at the blonde. Fine, all we do is try to help you and set you on the right path, but if you want to ignore our advice then go right ahead. Come one Naoki-kun. She started to walk away but noticed that Naoki wasn't following her. He just moved his gaze to Samui. You haven't accepted my invitation for a date, Samui-san, he said in a bland voice, betraying no emotion. Samui just replied with an equally bland tone, I am sorry, Naoki-san, but I must decline your request. Why? He asked, raising his eyebrow. My clan in one of the only clans our village processes. Many would be honored to find a way into our clan, and when I am here offering you a way in, you decline. I said no, Naoki, she said again, even though this one was a bit louder. Naoki half scowled, half glared, again why? You do know of my clan's control, and being a clan heir, I could protect you and your friends from any problems. Naruto, deciding that he had enough, said in a light tone, you know flowers and chocolate work a lot better than threats. Naoki turned to glare at Naruto, and for a moment his own killer intent laced it. I do not believe I asked for your opinion, Naruto-san, he said blandly. Naruto shrugged, and I believe I heard Sammy-chan say no, so I guess both of us are in the wrong. Naoki's eyes widened a bit at the Sammy-chan comment, but then quickly regained his composure. I see. Well, I must be off, but I will enjoy sparring with you in the future, Naruto-san, he said, and began to walk away, in the other direction as Yuriko, who ran to catch up with her true love. After the duo had left, Karui started to laugh. Did you see that bastard's face? I swear I have never seen him show that much emotion in my life. Omoi popped another sucker in his mouth. Why did he leave so quickly? Maybe he is going because it hurts his face to change expressions so much. Or maybe he is out plotting his revenge. Or maybe he did not get to finish because Karui had brought her fist down on his head. Shut up, Omoi Baka. Just be happy we won this one. Naruto smiled at his new friends. Perhaps this won't be such a boring year. he thought to himself. He was brought back to reality by Yugito shaking his shoulder. Thanks, she said as she watched Omoi and Karui fight, while Samui just shook her head, for standing up for us. Most people as soon as they hear of one of the Biju would have just walked away. But you didn't. I like that. Naruto gave an eye smile to Yugito. Think nothing of it, besides they are not out of the woods yet. Yugito gave him a curious look. What do you mean? She asked. Naruto's eyes sparkled with mischief as he scribbled an address on a stray piece of paper before giving it to her. Well, that could mean a lot of things, but I will need your help. Just meet me at this place at 8 p.m. If I am going to get those two, I will need your help to do it. Naruto turned and started to walk away. Later, Yugi-chan. Yugito smiled with a light blush tinting her cheeks. Later, Naruto-kun, she said. Inside her seal, Nibi was watching the boy walk away. Nice, I have an idea. How about you follow him, and when he gets near one of the closets, push him and yourself in so you can suck on his Nibi. It was an hour after school and Naruto was standing in front of two large, dark-toned muscular men, and Raki in the Raikage's office. The man at the desk had white combed back hair and wore the Raikage hat on his head. He wore a golden belt and had a stern gaze. The other man also had white hair and a goatee. He had on a white forehead protector with the Kumo symbol, along with a pair of black shades. He had on a Jonin flak jacket and a red rope around his waist, with 7 swords strapped to his back. So you must be the boy from Konoha. Naruto was it. The man at the desk started. My name is A, but you can just call me Raikage-sama, either one will do. I don't care. Never been one for formalities. Naruto gave a small smile under his mask. He liked this guy already. A then pointed to the man on his left. This is Kurabi, the Jinchuriki of Hachibi, and from now on, your sensei in controlling the Kyuubi's chakra. Kurabi gave Naruto a grin and held out his fist. How you doin', little nine? We go and make it so you can use the 9 tails just fine, yeah. Both Raki and Kurabi got large sweat drops on their heads and Naruto gave a nervous chuckle. Kid, if you ever start doing that, I don't care if I die, I will kill you. Regaining his composure, Naruto responded to his fist bump. Sounds fine, Kurabi-sensei. When do we start? Meet me at 10 at the hills, but you better be ready to pay the bills. He then disappeared in a puff of smoke. There was silence for a bit, before Naruto yelled, does anyone know what he just said? Raki just shrugged. Don't look at me, I haven't heard that man rap for years, I am out of practice. Both looked at Ahu's side. He wants you to meet him at 10 tomorrow on the outskirts of the city. Raki and Naruto nodded in understanding as it continued. Also, it is very important that your status as a Jinchuriki stays hidden, Naruto. That is why I am placing it as an S-ranked military secret. Not even the council or any of the other Sennin will know besides Raki, Kurabi, and myself. That's right, Kit. And I know you are just dying to tell everyone how you are the apprentice of such a handsome, stunning, and thoughtful man such as me, but you must resist, said Raki, putting his arm around Naruto's shoulder. Naruto pushed the arm off. I don't really think I want the women of Kumo relating me to you, Ero Masuda. Raki face faulted and pounded his desk in laughter. Ha ha ha, now that is a name that fits my student. Raki looked glumly at the floor before a brilliant idea popped into his head. He gave a devilish fox grin at A, who had stopped laughing when he saw it. That grin always meant trouble. Well, I did learn it all from you now, sensei, he began, getting his student's attention. Remember Makoto-sensei? Eureka-san. Them and the hundreds more you peeked on. I am surprised I am not any worse. I was confused. What could Raki have to gain by saying all this? His questions were answered when Naruto was walking out the door. Alright, you guys take care of that. Later, Ero Masuda. Later, Ero Densetsu. Threw a chair at Naruto, but he was already out the door. Raki was now the one laughing. Sucks for you, sensei. As soon as he gives you a name, you're labeled for life. Swung a punch at Raki, who used a kawairimi with a chair, which was destroyed. After a calm down, he asked Raki, so before our little distraction, I was going to remind Naruto-san to stay out of trouble. Do you think that will happen? Raki stopped laughing, thought for a moment before responding in a blank voice, enjoy how small the paperwork is with Yugito, before his shun shined away. Aside, this year is going to be very troublesome, he thought, but with the benefits, I would be a fool not to take it. Early in the morning screams could be heard throughout Kumogakure. The entire Minoru compound was painted a mix of bright orange and purple. Nothing was spared, the walls, the roofs, even the furniture, everything inside and outside the compound was either orange or purple. This was not as bad compared to the situations of Yuriko and Naoki. Both were tied to a pole in the center of the village plaza. On Naoki, the word, Tem, was written on every visible part of his body, with the same being for Yuriko, except it was, Shofu, with a 2 every once in a while. On a small cliff, overwatching the entire spectacle, were Yugito and Naruto, sitting on a small bench. Yugito had a pack of sushi and Naruto a bowl of ramen, which they were eating with large grins. I have to say, Yugito said as she popped a sushi roll into her mouth, when you first told me of your idea, I was considering taking you to the ward. Naruto shot her a masked grin. Yes, but if you hadn't come along, you wouldn't have been able to see this masterpiece, he said as he spread his arms to the mass destruction that they had caused. How did you get past the dogs? Asked Yugito. Most of the time if they even smell me they go ballistic. Naruto just reached into his pouch and pulled out a small bone that he tossed to Yugito. Take a sniff, he said as he got back to eating his ramen. Yugito smelled the bone before confusion spread across her face. Bacon? She asked incredulously. Naruto just waved it off as he finished his ramen. When he was done he nodded. Never like to hurt animals, so I just reward them with something so I can just get on with whatever I'm doing. Yugito nodded and made a mental note to get some of the bones for the future. So why did you need me? She asked. I'm pretty sure you could have done this on your own, so why did you want my help? Naruto stopped and looked at Yugito. 1. He held up a finger. I knew you wanted to get back at them as well. 2. More hands equal next work. And 3. I didn't really know where they lived, he finished with a smaller voice. Yugito gave a slight glare at the boy. So I was just free labor for you, is that it? She asked, intensifying her glare, making Naruto sweat a bit. No, he said in mock surrender, those were just some of the reasons I needed you here, but I brought you along because I like your company. Yugito's glare ceased that instant and she started to lightly blush. Oh look kitten, he likes your company, why don't you him to your room to make him appreciate it even more, tempted Nibi. But Yugito did not want to ruin this moment so she cut off her connection with her Biju. Thanks, she said, with a little blush present. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, knowing that he was in the clear, before he gave a chuckle. No probable, Yugito. Naruto. The duo turned to see a fuming Raikage staring straight at them. I think this is a good time to run, said Yugito, to which Naruto quickly nodded. They then jumped down the cliff and ran with the Raikage close behind. The morning was peaceful in Kumo. The sun was rising majestically from the far-off mountains, the citizens were just opening their shops and Naruto was sleeping peacefully in his bed, without a care in the wake up. Naruto was flipped out of his mattress and flung at the wall. Senses wide awake, he frantically searched the room for his attacker, only to come across Yugito with a displeased look on her face. Damn, you wore your mask to sleep, she said as she placed her hands on her hips and looked at the ground, and when you hit the wall, it didn't fall off. She then shrugged it off and replaced her previous expression with a happier one. Well, there is always tomorrow. I'll be making me some breakfast, she finished with glee, and walked out. As soon as she left, Naruto let out a heavy sigh. Ever since she learned that they were basically neighbors, and that they both lived alone, she would every so often break into his apartment and surprise him, whether it was with a new prank idea, or another attempt to see what he looked like under his mask. Naruto stumbled to the shower and let the warm water wash away the memory of his previous wake-up call. He had been in Kumo for about a year, and had accomplished a total of 2 things. The first was in his training with Kurabi, when he had managed to master up to his two-tailed state, before he went berserk. That had ruined a great deal of training grounds, Naruto thought to himself as he recounted the angry face of the Raikage after the 6th field had been destroyed. The second thing that he had done while here was create some strong bonds with his friends and classmates. Excluding 2, of course, he added in as he thought of Naoki and Yuriko, who had never really forgiven him for writing Tem and Shofu all over them. But he wasn't complaining, that was one of the funniest things he had done in a while. Naruto was on a lot better terms with the rest of the class though, they enjoyed at his pranks, but knew that he was reliable when they needed it, especially when he had gotten a hold of the answer key for the semester test. Some of the girls had even started a club to see what he looked like under his mask, to which Yugito said, "There is no way in hell they are seeing it before me." But the people Naruto mainly hung out with were Yugito, Samui, Omoi, Karui, and Aya. He and Omoi would normally spar with each other. But for some reason, during some of their spars Naruto felt like he was being watched. It felt creepy. With Aya he had officially gotten banned from the kitchen, because of an incident when he had tried to combine all of the different ramen flavors into one magnificent bowl. To make a long story short, it exploded. Guess that means that man was not meant to have something that delicious. He and Kyubi were in a small depression for about a week. Karui and Samui would normally relax with Naruto when they could. Karui's family owned a clothing store, so she worked there half-time, and since Samui needed the cash, she helped out when she could. But when they were off work, they would spend most of their time at the training grounds or someone's house, generally Naruto's because no one else could interrupt. Naruto and Yugito were the new pranksters of the village. People even called them Orenji to Murasaki no Kyofu, for how both orange and purple seemed to play a big part in their conjoined pranks. Naruto probably hung out with Yugito more than the rest, partly because she lived so close, and also how much they could relate. Yugito had confided in Naruto that when she was little she did have a mother, but she was always sick, and died when she was about 5. She was then moved to Kumo and taken under the care of Kurabi and A. After Yugito was finished, Naruto decided to tell her a modified version of his life. He told her of how he was an orphan from birth, and that the villagers did not like him very much. He left out most of the worst beatings and then told her how a man helped him escape, taught him some ninjutsu, then came to Kumo. When he was done, Yugito had tears of understanding in her eyes and hugged Naruto for close to half an hour. After Naruto was done with his shower, he got dressed and entered the kitchen to see Yugito eating a pack of sushi. Naruto nodded to her and moved to grab 5 cups of instant ramen. Yugito sighed at her fellow blonde, "You know it is not healthy to just eat ramen morning, noon, and night. You need a more balanced diet," she said as she popped a sushi roll into her mouth. Naruto looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "This is a balanced diet," he said as he showed her one of the cups, "this one has vegetables in it." Yugito knocked the cup away from her. "That's not good enough," she said as she took another bite of her sushi, "you need to eat more variety." Naruto just rolled his eyes. "This from the girl who can eat over 4 pounds of sushi in a day," he added in a sarcastically. Yugito pouted. "Fish is good for you," she said, making Naruto laugh. "Not if it is the only thing you eat," he laughed. Yugito just stuck her tongue out at him and went back to her meal. Both ate in a pleasant silence for a bit, until Yugito asked, "Who do you think is going to be on your team?" Naruto stopped eating and adopted a quizzical expression. "I don't really know," he said as he looked at his ramen. "I was in the middle of the class, so I could be paired up with anyone, perhaps. Omoi and Karui's families have been paired together before, so they will be on the same team, but as for you, Samui, and me, I am stumped." Yugito looked down a bit. "What if they see me as the demon bitch?" she asked in a small voice. Naruto grabbed Yugito's chin and forced her to look him in the eye. Then I will find them, shave off all of the hair on their bodies, and hang them upside down, from the Raikage's tower, he said with a comforting voice. Yugito giggled at the threat, and smiled back. Thanks, Naruto, she said as she got up from the table. Come on, let's go and find out our teams, she said, then turned around with a smirk. I want to see your face when you get paired with one of your fangirls. She ran out of the room with Naruto in a panicked state. That is not funny. He yelled after her, only praying that she was wrong, and no fangirls would be placed on his team. They both arrived a few minutes before class was going to start, and grabbed some seats near Samui, Karui, and Omoi. Did it work? Karui asked Yugito, who shook her head in defeat. Karui kicked her desk. Damn it. We have to try something else. Have you tried getting it off while he is sleeping? She asked. Yugito went into a thinking pose. No, I don't think that would work. We have to do it when he is awake and he is not suspecting anything, she said. Naruto's sweat dropped from the conversation. Don't you think it might be a good idea to not plot right in front of me? He offered. Both girls looked at him, then each other, and nodded, planning on picking up the conversation later. Yugito then turned to Samui. Come on, Samui-chan. You have seen his face. Just tell us a small detail. Hell, even a vague one, please. She begged. Samui just looked away. No, I promised Naruto I would not tell, she said sternly. Yugito pouted. Fine, just take your boyfriend's side, she said. Samui gave her a light bop on the head, but if you looked closely, you could see a faint blush. Just then Osamu walked into the class. All right, sit down and shut up, he yelled to silence the class. When he thought he had everyone's attention, he began his speech. Today you start your lives as part of the shinobi force of Kumo. You will be separated into teams depending on your specialties, and then those teams will be given a primary goal, such as information gathering, tracking, capture, assault and so on. Though you will be focusing on honing your skills in whatever job type you have been selected for, you will be expected to have proficient fighting skills for when you need them. The higher up jobs are mostly assassinations, so you better get used to killing. Osamu then picked up a clipboard from his desk. Team 12, that focuses on information gathering, is made up of Akihiko Fumio, Masuyo Yumi, and Susumu Ken. You will meet your sensei at Training Ground 4. Naruto tuned out for most of the teams, waiting for his name to be called. Samui, Omoi, and Karui were put on an assault team, and Naoki and Yuriko were put on their own two-man team, because of their political status. Yuriko did not stop squealing with joy. Naruto had almost fallen asleep when he heard his name. Team 33, which focuses on assassination, will be made up of Sho Isamu, Yugito, and Uzumaki Naruto. You will meet your sensei at Training Ground 16. Naruto shot Yugito thumbs up, to which she replied with a grin. He then looked over at his other teammate, Isamu Sho. He wore a black sweatshirt with gray ninja pants, and his Hitai sewn onto his right shoulder. His black hair and pale skin made him blend into the crowd of students. Isamu had a bored expression on his face, but his hazel eyes darted around the room, analyzing everything. The kid had done average in everything, but Naruto knew he was faking it. The Sho family made up a large percentage of the villages. Isamu was kind, level-headed, and very smart. He had proved that when he had come up with a fail-safe way to steal the test answers last semester. Yes, he would be a good person to have on the team. After Osamu released the class, Naruto, Yugito, and Isamu began walking to Training Ground 16. They walked in a pleasant silence as Naruto continued to look over his team. Yugito had begun to grow a figure, but it was only slight, and had placed her Kumo Hitai around her waist like a belt. Due to Raki's instructions, Naruto had hidden all of his strongest techniques. He walked around with his swords hidden in a storage seal on his palms. Without them he kind of felt. He had adorned his Hitai loosely around his neck. When the group arrived, they noticed a tall, dark-toned man waiting for them. He had white hair that covered his left eye, and wore the standard Kumo Jonin attire, with a high collar. He carried a small broadsword on his back and had the kanji for water and lightning tattooed on each arm. Ah, you are here, that's good. Things were beginning to get dull. He motioned them over to where he was and told them to sit down. All right, I guess I will begin, he said as he looked over his students. My name is Darui. My likes are relaxing, pocky, and nothing breaking. My dislikes are people who are arrogant. And my dream for the future is to serve the Raikage. He then motioned to Sho, who looked at the ground then back up to the group. My name is Sho Isamu, he said blandly. My likes are training and family. I don't really dislike anything except for those who try to harm my family. And my dream for the future is to be a respected clan head. Darui nodded, then pointed at Yugito. Okay, now you're up, Purple, he said lazily. Yugito gave a grin. My name is Ni Yugito. My likes are sushi, friends, pranks, and training. My dislikes are arrogant bastards who act like they are better than everyone else, and that sushi goes bad if you leave it out for a while. My dream is to be a powerful protector of Kumo, she said. Darui gave a small smile, and then moved over to Naruto. All right, and blonde number 2, he said. Naruto shrugged. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. My likes are ramen, my precious people, training, and pranks. My dislikes are people who treat others badly for something out of their control, and the 3 minutes it takes to make ramen. My dream is to protect Kumo and my precious people, he finished with an eye smile. Darui gave another smile at Naruto. But then Isamu interrupted with something. I am afraid you are forgetting something, Naruto-san, he said lazily. Naruto rose an eyebrow at him, and that is? He asked. Isamu sighed. You haven't shown anyone your face. If we were on a mission and someone was impersonating you, it could be a failsafe to ensure it was really you, he explained. Oh, Naruto said as he paled a bit, so that means I have to show you all right now. Isamu and Darui nodded. It does sound like the best option. And also everyone on the team knowing what you look like under your mask would ensure team bonding, Darui added. Yugito was now bouncing with joy and anticipation. This is it, Nibi. All of our hard work will finally pay off. She thought to her charge. I know kitten, I can hardly wait. And of all the days not to bring a camera, said Nibi, who was looking at Naruto intently. So what are you waiting for? Take off that mask and show the world, yelled Yugito, getting in closer to have a better view. Naruto narrowed his eyes a bit. You are enjoying this, aren't you? He asked, to which Yugito grinned and nodded. Seeing that he was not getting out of this, he sighed. All right, fine, he said and begun to remove his mask. When he took it off, Darui shrugged. Whisker marks, who knew, he said. Isamu looked confused. Why would you want to hide your face? I see nothing wrong with he stopped when he saw Yugito looking slack-jawed at Naruto. There was a 3-second pause before she disappeared and reappeared right next to Naruto, glomping the life out of him. Kawaii. These are adorable. Why didn't you let me see them earlier? Inside her, Nibi was doing no better. I knew we had hit the jackpot with this kid. Understanding, kind, and now we can add on hot. When you are done choking him, drag him back to your room and tie him up. So we can see his whiskers every day. She yelled from her cage. When Darui finally managed to pry Yugito away from Naruto, Isamu spoke up. I now understand why you wore a mask. Naruto just nodded at him, trying to regain his breath. After Naruto had replaced his mask, Darui continued. All right, continuing on from where we got off track, training ground 16 will be where we will do missions from 9 to 12, then training exercises until 6. Team 33 nodded. All right. Darui added. Now I want all of you to go home and rest up for Tomer. He was interrupted by a puff of smoke. As the smoke cleared, it revealed Raki, the Kitsune Sennin. Kit, he yelled, before running up and grabbing Naruto. I just heard that the bastard Takashi and Chiasa used their political influence to get their two brats on a two-man squad. Do you know what that means? Emphasizing each word with a shake. Meanwhile, Yugito was slack-jawed, and Isamu and Darui were wide-eyed. Araki-sama, what are you doing here? Asked Darui, who was still confused about why one of the legendary Sennin of Kumo was shaking his student. Raki turned his head to Darui. Oh, I didn't know you would still be here, he said, voicing his surprise. He then turned to Yugito. You're the kid who humiliated Takashi Thames and Chiasa's apprentice, right? He asked. Yugito shyly nodded her head. Raki stared at Yugito for a moment, before he nodded. Nice job, he said, before turning back to Naruto. Well now, Kit, looks like you blew my cover, said Raki, who shook his head. I am so disappointed. Regaining his balance, Naruto glared at Raki. What do you mean I blew it? You were the one who randomly appeared here, and started yelling about it, Ero Masuda. Raki glared at his student. I told you to stop calling me that, and I think we are forgetting who is at fault here, he continued. Yeah, you, yelled Naruto. Yugito, Isamu, and Darui were completely confused with what had happened in the last couple of minutes. Raki, one of the Sennin, had arrived and started yelling at Naruto, who was yelling back with equal vigor, even going so far as to call him, Ero Masuda. Alright, can someone please explain what is going on? Yugito asked as she pinched the bridge of her nose. Raki turned to her. Well, that could easily be explained, by Naruto, he said as he pushed his apprentice forward. Well, you see, remember when you said that only the Ukami and Neko Sennin had apprentices? You were kind of wrong, Naruto stuttered as he rubbed the back of his neck. Eyes frantically darted around the training ground, looking for a place to hide if need be. Yugito's eyes widened with realization. You are the Kitsune Sennin's apprentice, she said quietly. Naruto nodded. Since I was 6, he added. There was silence for a few moments before Yugito punched Naruto square in the face. He was knocked to the ground, and looked up in fear of seeing Yugito in rage. You knew all this time and didn't tell me. She yelled as tried to smash his face again. Naruto rolled out of the way and started to back away. Now Yugi-chan, listen, he said as he raised his hands in surrender. I don't want to listen. She yelled, and took out a couple of kunai and aimed them at his neck. Naruto and hid behind a training post. Please have mercy, he said meekly. Yugito smiled darkly. Sorry, all out, and proceeded to chase Naruto around the grounds with a variety of sharp and heavy objects. From the sidelines, Isamu was shaking his head at his teammates. Well, at least there will never be a dull moment, he said, as he watched Yugito using Naruto as a punching bag. Raki looked at the boy curiously. You don't seem that surprised, he said. Isamu just shrugged. I always knew Naruto was a bit different. If you told me now that he was the Raikage's long-lost son, I could see it, he said as he took a seat on the dirt. Darui then looked at Raki. Since he is an apprentice, he said with his eyebrow raised, what can he do? Raki just smirked at him. Now where would be the fun in that? I'll give you some hints, but the rest you will have to find out. He can summon, is skilled at a complex shinobi art, and has something similar to your Kuroi Kaminara, but the rest you will have to get from him. Darui's visible eye rose a bit on the last hint, but he kept his mouth shut. Raki then turned to the scuttle happening between Naruto and Yugito. Hey kid, when you are done playing with your girlfriend, tell them the complications of knowing this secret, he yelled, only to have to dodge a swarm of shuriken. Oh, she has a temper. This is going to be fun for you, Darui, he said with a grin, before using the shunshin, and disappearing. After Yugito was through with Naruto, he explained why he and Raki had kept his apprenticeship a secret, going into how he had traveled with Raki since he was 6, and had not stayed in a place for more than a month. When he was finished, Isamu was the first to accept it, later by a reluctant Yugito, who said that Naruto would owe her a lot of sushi in the future. Darui watched the scene in pride. seeing how early on his team was building bonds with each other. I think that this not going to be as dull as I thought, said Darui quietly to himself. But with a two-tailed Jinchuriki, a ramen-loving senin in training, and a trained assassin, when would it be peaceful in the village again? He then told the group to meet him here at 9 o'clock the next morning to start missions. When Naruto got home that night, he was beat. Most of the wounds Yugito had inflicted were healed, but were still sore. He winced as he fell into his bed. Kit, that was the most entertaining thing I have seen in a long time, said Kyuubi from his cage. Seeing you get your whooped by that cat's container was funny as shit. And why are you laughing? Naruto thought back. Last time I checked, you felt what I felt, so why aren't you hurting? The fox snorted from his cage. Kit, you getting hurt is minuscule to what I think pain is, so it doesn't bother me. You getting punched in the stomach by a female's rage feels like a bug bite to me, explained the Kyuubi. Naruto was about to make a comeback, but froze when he sensed a presence at the door. He looked over and saw Yugito standing there with a scowl on her face. You didn't tell me everything, she said, as she walked closer. Raki wouldn't have just picked anyone to teach, there had to be some reason he picked you. Yugito was now standing right in front of him, glaring directly into his eyes. It could be family, but Raki never saw that as extremely important, so that is out. She continued to list off. If you had a bloodline that would make sense, but that would also mean a lot of political trouble getting you here. So tell me, why? Naruto looked away from her. You don't want to know that, he said quietly. Trust me, this is something that you do not want to hear. Bullshit, Yugito said, her voice getting a bit louder. We are on a team Baka. If I don't know something that could be a threat, you are not only putting me at risk, but Samui, Omoi, Karui, Raki, and the entire village. So I will ask again, why? Naruto looked down at the ground, the bangs of his hair creating a shadow over his eyes. There was silence for a minute before he spoke. You don't know how lucky you have it, he said curtly. Yugito raised an eyebrow. What is that supposed to mean? She asked. Naruto said again, only louder, I said you don't know how lucky you have it. I have seen the way people look at you, some glare, some scowl, but that is it. You do not know how bad it is for people like us outside of Kumo. People like us. What is that supposed to mean? Yugito stopped right there as shock and realization formed on her face. You're a Jinchuriki, she said, barely above a whisper. Naruto nodded, and when he looked up, Yugito took a step back in shock. His normal bright, sapphire, blue eyes, which she thought was one of his best qualities, were dull, and expressed powerful feelings of fear, anger, loneliness, and above all, pain. I was born on October 10th, in the village of Konoha, he started, gathering Yugito's attention. On that night, the Kyuubi no Yoko attacked our village, killing hundreds of people, shinobi and civilian alike. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, the Yondaime Hokage used his last resort, the Shiki Fuin, to use the Shinigami to seal half of the beast within himself, and the other half inside a newborn baby. Yugito was paying rapt attention now, silently dreading the words to come. The reason the Shiki Fuin is considered a last resort, is because it takes the soul of the wielder as payment, continued Naruto, not a speck of emotion in his voice. The Yondaime's last wish was for me to be treated as a hero, but I guess he gave the villagers too much credit. Tears were beginning to fall down Naruto's face as he recounted his life. The council demanded my death immediately after they were informed, but thanks to the help of Sandaime, I survived. But that did not mean that the council and the villagers wouldn't make my life a living hell. They placed me in an orphanage, where I was forced to sleep in the cold and wet basement, and was only fed once a week, and even then they were table scraps that I had to eat in a corner. When I got old enough to talk, I asked why and they would reply, demons don't deserve to eat people food, and would slap me in the face. Yugito listened in horror as Naruto told her his past. The children were encouraged to pick on me, and beat me up, and if I tried to defend myself, I would be punished severely, Naruto said, as he subconsciously squeezed his pants. When I turned 4, the orphanage kicked me out onto the streets, where I had to dig through the garbage for a meal, and if I was lucky, a small ramen shop would give me a bowl on the house. However, during those times, the mob started. They would hunt me down, and beat me to an inch of death, before the Anbu would come to disperse the crowd, and then leave as quickly as they had come. I was left to heal myself most of the time. Sometimes an Inu-faced Anbu would take me to the hospital, but it was always a 50-50 chance if I would get treated or not. That was the case, when on my birthday, I was beaten so badly that I was in a coma for about 2 days. When I awoke to find the Sandame watching me, I told him about my life on the streets, and he was furious. He then gave me my own apartment, which I lived in for barely a year. Yugito was both disgusted and horrified with what these monsters had done to a child, and deeply wanted to make them pay. On my 6th birthday, I was hiding out in my apartment. I had learned early on that on my birthday, the beatings were the worst. Said Naruto, who was looking at the floor again, slightly shivering. It was then when a mob broke into my house, chased me into a dark alley, and proceeded to give me the worst beating of my life. Naruto looked to stare right at Yugito. I was stabbed, cut, my ribs were broken, and to top it all off, some ninja in the group used some Kaden jutsus on me, giving me second-degree burns all over my body. I was then moved out of the village, and crucified to a stake in the middle of the forest, left to die. Finally a small smile graced Naruto's lips. That was when I met Raki. He had been traveling through the outskirts of Konoha, and had smelled my blood. He took me away from the village and offered to teach me. I accepted, because he told me the reason I was hated, and I was unsure if I wanted to protect those people. He finished and then gave a dry chuckle. I am sorry, I am sure you didn't want to know that. In an instant Yugito was pulling him into a hug, and was sobbing her eyes out. Naruto was confused, but slowly relaxed into it. They stayed like that for a while. Naruto didn't know, he just stayed there, silent, waiting for Yugito to finish. When she did look up, her eyes were puffy red. How can you still smile, with everything that has happened to you? She asked. She had never seen Naruto with less than a smile on his face, and had never seen him cry. Naruto gave her a smile. I never gave up, he said simply. I would never let their words get to me, and if they did, I always had a friend nearby to knock me on the head to get my senses back together. He then looked up at the ceiling. To tell you the truth, I have never told anyone this in that detail. I always kept the worst parts to myself, so no one would have to pity me. But with you, it was different. Yugito gave a dry laugh and whipped the tears from her eyes. That's because we are friends, Baka, and them hurting you is just like them hurting me, she said as she put her hand in front of him. If you ever see one of those bastards again, I will be there to help you kick their back to hell. What do you say? Naruto gave her a foxy grin. Great Yugi-chan, great, he said as he grabbed the offered hand. Yugito grinned back, and walked to the door. I'll see you tomorrow for missions, she said with a wave. Yugito, Naruto said, making her turn back to see a serious expression on his face. This is considered an SS-ranked secret, so you cannot tell anybody about it. Understand? Yugito nodded, and exited the apartment. A smile played on Naruto's lips. Thanks for understanding, Yugi-chan, he said to himself, before he let exhausted but blissful sleep claim him. Yugito had just entered her apartment when she heard a feminine yawn coming from her head. Her apartment was very similar to Naruto's, except it had more pictures around the place, was a bit dirtier, and the smell of fish was ever present. You were sleeping the whole time? She asked the cat demon, which was doing some stretches. Of course, kitten, said Nibby, you went to hurt the blonde, and I had already seen that this morning. So there was no real need for me to watch. Yugito sighed. Well, I didn't kick his. He had a perfectly good reason for not telling anybody, she thought as she prepared for bed. Oh, and what might that be? Nibby said, getting interested. He's a Jinchuriki like me. said Yugito as she walked out of the bathroom. Oh, well, that makes sense. He did always heal from injuries fast, and he has that ungodly stamina, but who does he contain? Ikibi. He is a little coward who won't let anyone near his container. Me. That's obvious. The Sanbi doesn't really do well with heights. Yunbi. Maybe. Gobi. So polite that you would rip your own ears off, so no. Rokubi. Iu. Nanabi. Such a bitch, I would like to claw her eyes out. Were any of these on target? Yugito shook her head. Nope, all wrong. He contains the Kyubi no Yoko, she said, but was not expecting the reaction from her container. Q-kun is here, she yelled, causing Yugito to jump. What are you waiting for? Kitten, go and claim him right now. I have waited far too long to be denied him when he is so close. Yugito sighed. Good night, Nibi, she thought and laid in her bed. What are you doing, kitten? You should not be sleeping. That should be exactly the opposite of what you should be doing tonight. Go back into his room, and claim him. Get down on your knees and suck his. Yugito shut her connection to Nibi, and enjoyed the blisses of sleep, while Nibi ranted about the stuff she should be doing to Naruto. Darui sighed as he looked down at their targets, happily drinking in the bandit main camp, unaware that this would be their last night among the living. Though Darui looked calm, inside he was a bit worried. This was Team 33's first C-ranked mission, and it would also be the first time for most of them to experience the feeling of taking another man's life. Darui had wanted to keep them on D ranks for a while. Sure, every shinobi knew of the horrors of D ranks, the meaningless tasks such as weeding, babysitting, and finding lost pets, but their main purpose was to ease new genin into a lifestyle of constant missions. But knowing this, Darui also knew his team was far from normal. Due to the incident last month with the discovery of Naruto's apprenticeship, he had gone to the Raikage to find out any other information he should know about his new genin. The Raikage had seen fit to tell him about Naruto's Jinchuriki status and his relationship with Konoha. Darui wanted to ask the specifics of the relationship, but from the grim look the Raikage had on during the meeting, he could tell that it was best not to pry. After the awkward team introduction the day before, his 3 students had seemed changed. Naruto had taken to removing his mask during training, saying that if they were a team, he would let them know that he trusts them. Yugito was also a lot calmer, focusing on mastering the few Kaden techniques that she knew, but her gaze also seemed to be drawn towards Naruto when he wasn't looking. Isamu, who from the report at the academy was very reserved and rarely spoke, tried to be more open with his teammates, every so often showing off a portion of emotion that his family was trained from birth to keep under control. However, it showed the most when Yugito had thrown a fireball at him for pointing out that she was staring at Naruto. So far his team was working together flawlessly, not a single mission had failed and, except for some minor goof-offs, was done in the quickest way possible. Darui had also been silently evaluating the strengths and weaknesses each member had, both as a ninja, and personally. As a team overall, he could easily see why Raikage had made them an assassination specialist squad. Naruto, Yugito, and Isamu were highly skilled in stealth, being able to sneak in and out of buildings almost undetected. Pushing those thoughts away, Darui grabbed his headset, positions. He whispered into the microphone. There was silence before he heard a response. Shadow in position, said a low, crackling voice. Moments later, 2 more voices were heard. Fox Cat in position, said Naruto and Yugito at the same time. Darui nodded. All right, Shadow, proceed with Plan A. Cat, get in as close as you can and wait for the signal. And Fox, create the diversion, and sneak in for the kill, said Darui, who was rewarded with a chorus of, "Hi, Sensei." The leader of the bandits took another swig of sake as he looked around his camp. Most of his men were out patrolling the area, so it was highly unlikely that he and the few men he had left as guards would be disturbed. He looked around at all of the equipment and entertainment they had acquired in the last town. The people that lived there were weak and too scared to try and stop them. But though the men were weak, the women were beautiful. The man smirked as he looked at his greatest prize. Lying in the corner was Nobuko Mi, daughter of the village mayor. She was tied to a pole, with a rag in her mouth, along with the other women they had kidnapped from the village. Her clothes were stripped, and her body was covered with semen and other bodily fluids. Her eyes were red with dried tears. He decided that he wanted to have fun with his girl, and moved in a drunken stumble to the whimpering woman. He roughly pulled her towards his face and gave a long lick down her neck. Mi's eyes opened and widened in fear as she realized what was happening to her. The bandit leader gave her a lustful grin, but before he could continue, a rustling was heard in the bushes. The three men instantly stiffened. The two guards grabbed their swords and the leader pushed the girl to the ground. They moved in quietly, weapons raised and eyes hardened. Just then a small red fox poked its head out. The men relaxed and one even lowered his sword. It was then when the fox grinned and disappeared in a puff of smoke. As soon the little fox disappeared, the group knew that there was trouble. Three kunai embedded themselves in the ground at their feet. The guards looked up to see a young girl dressed in purple coming right at them. The guard on the left reacted the fastest, by swiping his sword across the girl's stomach. Instead of falling to the ground, her skin light up with electricity, sending a strong electrical current down the blade of the sword, shocking the guard. He fell to his knees as he screamed in pain, before blacking out. The girl looked at the other thieves, before dispersing in a shower of lightning. The two other bandits tried to run from the scene, back to the camp, but were met with another rain of kunai. The leader remained unharmed, but the same could not be said for his companion, whose body was now littered with the throwing knives. The bandit leader knew what was happening. These were no mere mercenaries, these were shinobi, trained to kill from a young age, and weapons for the highest buyer. The mayor had probably hired them to save his daughter, but he was not going to let them have the satisfaction of going home unscathed. He quickly stumbled to his feet and drew his sword. Mi was looking at him with utter terror in her eyes, begging him not to do what he was thinking. Die, bitch! He yelled as he charged the defenseless girl. Mi closed her eyes, silently saying goodbye to all of her friends and loved ones, and waited for the pain. She waited. No pain. She waited for a bit longer but still felt no pain. Gathering her courage, she slowly opened up her eyes, and was met with the bandit captain on the ground, bleeding profusely from the jugular and lung. In front of her was a boy no older than maybe 13 or 14, wearing a white sweatshirt with clouds on the top half. She could tell that he was taking deep breaths by the way his body rose and fell. Mi wondered why until she saw a bloody kunai in each hand. Naruto had been in the trees not so far off from the camp. The plan had gone off perfectly, that was at the beginning of course. The mayor of a small village in Yu had asked them to take care of some renegades that were terrorizing the village and also save his daughter and the rest of the captured women. This was the first C-rank mission of Team 33, and he was relieved that they got to do one mission that didn't involve finding any lost pets. Darui had taken care of the bandits patrolling the area rather quickly, and then had said that taking out the last three would be great training for them. Naruto had summoned a small fox to lure the three thugs from their encampment, and when it disappeared, a Raiden Bushinon of Yugito had attacked them directly, purposely getting hit with their metal swords so it could send some powerful shocks to their enemies, while the real Yugito went and freed the women in the cages. Isamu stayed in the trees, waiting for the right moment when the other two started to run. As soon as they did, he used a cage kunai no jutsu to finish them off. What they did not expect was for the thief leader to survive, and charge the mayor's daughter with the intent to kill. Naruto knew he had to act fast. He jumped from his hiding place and pulled two kunai from his pouch. Sprinting towards the man, as soon as he was close enough, he made for a slice with his left hand, cutting the leader's jugular in half. Naruto then stabbed his other hand into the man's left lung, embedding the blade deep into skin, before kicking the carcass away. As Naruto took a couple of breaths to calm down, he realized what he had done. He had killed the man, in cold blood, and then after he had died, he had continued to stab, to make sure he was dead. In truth, the leader had died the moment his jugular was cut, letting loose a torrent of his blood pour out. He was already dead when Naruto stabbed him in the lung, and he was already dead when he hit the ground, and he kicked him. Naruto turned around to look at the woman he had just saved. The girl looked to be around 15 or 16, with brown hair, that currently looked wild and sticky. She had green eyes that stared directly at him, that were red and puffy. As he looked down, he blushed crimson, seeing that she was completely. He quickly looked around the campsite, until his eyes fell upon a blanket. He grabbed it and draped it around the shivering girl. He gave her a small smile. Hey, it's okay. You are safe now, your father sent us to find you. He has been very worried, he said in a soft voice. Naruto untied her hands and then removed the rag in her mouth. There was silence for a moment, before the girl embraced him and started to sob into his shoulder. Not having much experience with this, he just patted her on the back, whispering soothing words to her, and sending a pleading look to his teammates and sensei, who had arrived moments earlier with confusion written on their faces. After they had gotten Mi to calm down, they began escorting the women back to their homes. Mi, though, refused to let go of Naruto, much less let him out of her sight. Most of the team felt fine with this, except for Yugito, who kept shooting death glares when she was not looking, or when Mi moved in closer to Naruto. When they arrived back at the village, the women ran to their husbands or loved ones, while Mi ran to her father, who was smiling with joy. After the greetings were through, the mayor gave Darui a small scroll, saying that a hawk had arrived with it while they were gone. He also invited them to stay a night at his mansion, before they headed back to Kumo. That night before dinner, Darui called his team into the living room for a team meeting. First off, I want to tell you that you all did excellently on your first C-rank mission. But suffice it to say, we are not going home just yet, he said as his students looked at him curiously. I just got a message from Raikage-sama, a C-ranked mission has just come in from Nami, and since we are the closest, he wants us to go and complete it, he continued. Why are we going there? Asked Yugito. I have always heard that Nami was a poor country, and I have never heard of our shinobi doing missions there. Isamu nodded. It is quite odd, Nami mostly sends their mission requests to Konoha or Mist. So if they are sending us one, they are in serious need. Which brings up the question of why only AC rank, he said as he looked at his sensei for clarification. Darui nodded. Very good, Isamu. Yes, Nami has mostly done business with Konoha, and it is a poor country, but the only reason they are poor is because trade cannot get to the main lands by anything but boat, he said, as he laid a map on the floor. Our client is building a bridge, connecting the main land to Nami. If that happens, Nami's economy will skyrocket. We are assigned to protect him from bandits that may try to stop him. Darui pointed out the island on the map, before rolling it up. Any questions? You are forgetting one key detail, Sensei, said Naruto. His eyes were now glued to the floor. The only way to get to Nami is to go through Hai no Kuni, he said. Yugito and Isamu widened their eyes. How could they forget that Nami was off the coast of Hai no Kuni? Naruto returning to that land would not only cause a great deal of trouble for their squad, but also for Naruto mentally. Darui looked straight at Naruto. I know, he said, making Naruto's head shoot up. It is partly the reason that we have been chosen to go. With the chance that we might encounter some Konoha shinobi, if they attack, you will know the most about the clans inside the village and might be able to link the attackers with their clans. This will give us not only information on the hidden village, but an idea of how to beat them. Naruto still looked unsure, so Darui's gaze softened before pointing to the Hittite around his neck. This marks you as a shinobi of Kumo, he said, catching his student's attention. Though you have had citizenship in Konoha, you also had traveling rights, and could leave the village if you pleased. But now that you are one of our shinobi, you have citizenship in Kumo, and are part of our military, so if they try to take you back, it is an act of war. Naruto looked at his own Hittite, tracing his finger along the engraving of the Kumo symbol. He looked up at his teacher with determination and a grin. Let's do it, sensei, he said loudly, causing Yugito to grin as well, and Darui and Isamu to have a small smile. Now that is settled, said Darui as he moved towards the dining room, dinner is almost ready. The mayor had spared no expense in the meal. It was a buffet of foods from all around you, and just for Naruto, there was a large bowl of ramen. Mi, who looked a lot better than when they found her, spent the night talking with Naruto, which only seemed to annoy Yugito more. When they left in the morning for a small port town in Mi had given Naruto a light peck on the lips as a goodbye. Isamu had to keep Yugito from tearing her to shreds. Nibi wasn't doing much better, as she kept screaming at the harlot, who was taking her Q-kun. As the team ran towards the Nami, Yugito's eyes began to wander to Naruto. After she had learned of his status, she had forgiven him, but not before he did some things for her. The first was that she got a couple of pictures of him without his mask. She spent hours teasing his fan club, giving them brief flashes of the photos before turning away. The second thing was that he had to promise that he would not wear his mask outside of the village. She had discovered that it was his weak point. If she rubbed his whiskers, he would instantly calm down, and do whatever she said. The final wish was that he had to pay for 2 weeks of sushi for Yugito. Naruto had cried when he heard that, saying that he would not be able to afford ramen again for months. What a not surprising since he is Q-kun's Jinchuriki, said Nibi. Yugito sighed. Ever since Nibi had learned that the Kyuubi was sealed inside Naruto, her perverted comments were even dirtier than before. She had even had to excuse herself when Nibi's ideas got to her. Will you knock it off, Nibi, you are such a pervert, thought Yugito to the demon. Oh ho, I'm the perv. Remember kitten, I see what you see, so if I am the perv, why are you staring at his, said Nibi, a lecherous grin on her face. Yugito tried to respond, but the blush growing on her face was making it hard to think. Shish, shut up, Aro Neko, she thought back. Nibi just laughed. You know that you should be using this to your advantage. The ramen girl is always at the shop, Samui is on another team, you are the only one that he understands, she said. Yugito snorted. I don't like him like that, Nibi, she thought back to the Hellcat. Oh, you can't lie to me, kitten, I have seen those dreams you have about him. Very kinky, even by my standards, Nibi said, before giggling pervertedly. Yugito lit up completely red, and tried to stutter a retort, but came up with nothing. Naruto looked over at Yugito, who was red as a tomato. Are you okay? He asked. She instantly stiffened, stuttered a no, then made some distance between them. Naruto gave her a confused look, but left her to her thoughts and the giant perverted Neko. Naruto had been on edge ever since they had entered High no Kuni. Though they were traveling on the coast, Konoha was still a good distance away, and they kept most of their anbu around the village, and had small guard towers all around the country. Darui's words had comforted him a bit. Besides, what were the chances that he would meet any Konoha shinobi in Nami? On a path outside of the village, Kakashi felt the need to sneeze. He was on his team's first C-rank mission. He looked at the members of Team 7. Uchiha Sasuke, Rookie of the Year and the last of the Uchiha, and the reason he had a team in the first place. After the Uchiha massacre, the village and the village council saw it fit to have the only Jonin with a developed Sharingan to train the boy. Sasuke had spiky black hair and black, soulless eyes, like all Uchiha. He had a blue shirt with the collar up, white shorts, white arm protectors going down each arm and his Hittite displayed on his forehead. He was currently brooding, ignoring the incessant chatter of his two teammates. Sakura Haruno was a very smart girl. It was because of that she was the top kunoichi of her class, rather than for fighting skills. She had long pink hair that ran down her back, bright green eyes, and a noticeable forehead. She wore a red kipao dress in her hitai atop her head. She was currently going on about how great her Sasuke-kun was, and was berating their temporary member, Kiba. Kiba Inuzuka was very similar to his clan, personality-wise, brash, feral, stubborn, but deathly loyal to his comrades. He was officially part of Team 8, with Kurenai as his sensei, but she had lent him to Kakashi, provided that he take of him, and not turn him into a pervert. He wore a fur-lined coat, gray pants, and his partner, Akamaru, hidden in his hood. He was currently yelling at Sakura to keep quiet about the Emo King. Their current job was to escort an old man, Tazuna, back to his home in Nami, and protect him from bandits while he finished building his bridge. The mission seemed a bit odd, but after Sasuke had demanded a higher-ranked mission, this was the only thing that he had. Hopefully nothing would go wrong and he would be back in Konoha by next month. He did not know what he had just gotten himself into. Naruto was bored, and even though he had matured during his time with Raki, 1 minute of nothing still felt like an eternity. He was currently on guard duty while the rest of his teammates rested. It had taken 3 days to get to Wave, and then they had hitched a ride with a local fisherman to the other side. Darui's main objective was to find and report to Tazuna for the mission. Kumo had sent a letter of acceptance to Tazuna, but they still had to find him to start the mission. Naruto pulled out a photo of the man. Old, male, glasses, fat, he repeated in his mind. "You forgot drunkard," said Kyuubi, pointing out a large flask tied to his pack. Naruto sighed. He lazily checked his surroundings for the 50th time, but straightened when he felt a surge of chakra. Creating a Raiden Bushidan to go and inform his teammates, he set off in the direction of the surge. When he arrived, he could easily say he was shocked. Standing by the lake was the one and only Momochi Zabuza, Kurigakure no Kijin, owner of the Kubikiribocho, and the leader of the coup d'état that Amayuri Ne was a part of. His head was wrapped in bandages, except for the top, which his brown hair stuck out of. He also had worn a pair of striped baggy pants. Across from him was someone who Naruto knew instantly, Hitaki Kakashi, but better known as the Kopi Ninja no Kakashi, known to have copied thousands of jutsus with his implanted Sharingan eye. He wore standard Konoha Jonin gear, and had a face mask much like the one Naruto wore in Kumo. His Hitai was on his head, revealing his Sharingan eye. Naruto then looked to the other group. There was a kid in a blue shirt, a girl with pink hair that reminded him vaguely of the banshee that had attacked him, and another boy with a dog growling at Zabuza. Behind them was a heavy-looking, old man, wearing a straw hat. Naruto's mind began to move a mile a minute. Okay, the old man they are guarding matches the description we have of Tazuna. Since Kakashi is here, they must be his genin team, and by the looks of it, still wet behind the ears. They must have been sent to also protect Tazuna, but why would he hire 2 separate villages? As Naruto pondered this, he noticed a group of familiar chakra signatures headed his way. He turned to find Isamu, Darui, and Yugito jumping towards him. Darui moved silently to his side. "What is the situation?" he asked quietly. "Bad," Naruto replied before pointing at the battle. "Konoha is here, and they seem to be doing the exact same job we have. And to make it worse, they have just made enemies with Zabuza Mamachi." Darui looked over the situation, before looking back at his team. "This is your decision. Technically, since Tazuna has lied about the mission specs, and has hired 2 teams from 2 different villages, we can just leave," he said. Team 33 looked at each other before nodding their heads. "Let's hear what he has to say, then we can decide whether to abandon the mission," said Isamu, who was now preparing a set of paper bombs. Sighing, Darui looked back at the fight. Kakashi had fought back with some high-powered sweet injustice, and had knocked Zabuza into a tree. Just when Kakashi was about to end Zabuza's life, a Senbon flew out of the trees, hitting Zabuza in the neck, making him fall over dead. Kakashi turned to find a Kiri hunter Nin walking out of the bushes. Thank you for your help in subduing him. I have been after Zabuza for quite a while, he said as he moved towards the body. Kakashi checked to see if Zabuza was really dead, before handing him over to the hunter. I must go and dispose of the body, but before I go, the hunter turned towards the hidden Kumo shinobi, you can come out now. Darui silently cursed before looking at Naruto. Naruto nodded and pulled his mask up to cover his whisker marks, and flipped on his hoodie to hide his hair. When they jumped out of the trees, Kakashi and his team were surprised. How long have they been there? Kakashi thought to himself. Tazuna seemed at first surprised, then worried. What are you doing here, Kumo-san? Asked the hunter Nin. Darui gave a bored sigh. My team and I are here for a mission that was assigned to us from a Mr. Tazuna. It involved guarding him against bandits, but seeing that he already has a team, and that he lied about the specifications, we would like to have a little chat with him. Tazuna shivered, and Team 7 was on guard again. The hunter just nodded and flung Zabazaz over his shoulder. I see, well I must be off, he said, before disappearing into the forest. Kakashi then turned his full attention to Kumo team. Why are you really here? Are you after the Sharingan? He accused. Naruto let out a scoff. While the Sharingan is indeed a powerful weapon in the right hands, considering its history, and it would not bode well to take it to Kumo. Sasuke gritted his teeth and glared at the boy who mocked his family. Darui kept his bored expression. We just want to talk with him, and frankly we wanted to avoid your ninja while we were here. So you being on this job is as big a problem to us as to you, he stated. Kakashi stared at them for a bit longer before looking at Tazuna. Take us back to your house, you can have your little talk when you get there. And after that I want to have one with you, finishing off with a glare that made Tazuna sweat bullets. Kakashi replaced his Hitai-8, before he collapsed. Sakura was about to yell, when she saw that the Kumo boy, who had spoken earlier, had caught Kakashi and was now carrying him on his shoulder. Chakra exhaustion, he said curtly, before turning to Tazuna, lead the way Tazuna-san. He nodded, then led the two teams, one from Kumo and the other from Konoha, back to his house. In the forest a couple of miles away, the hunter Nin laid Zabazaz's body on the wet grass. He then removed a tool kit from his pouch. First I'll drain the blood, he said, as he moved the tweezers towards the neck. But before he could, a hand shot up and stopped him. I can do it myself, said Zabuza. Oh, you've already come back, said the hunter as he moved his hands back. Zabuza grunted as he yanked the senbon out of his neck. Damn it, you are too rough, he said. The hunter just looked blankly at him, says the person just yanking them out. You could die like that. Zabuza just scoffed before glaring at his partner. When are you going to take off that mask? He yelled. The hunter just chuckled. I like the mask, and it did help you get out alive. However, he removed the mask. He had long black hair, pale skin, and large brown eyes. On first look, he looked quite feminine. Zabuza gave an annoyed grunt before looking off into the mist. Next time, I will kill that scarecrow, said with vengeance. Yes, but now you will have to deal with another team, said Haku as he put his toolkit away. Zabuza raised his non-existent eyebrows. They got reinforcements? He asked. Haku shook his head. No, a team from Kumo came to take the mission as well. Zabuza just ignored her comment. When will I be ready to fight again? He asked. Haku looked over his body. Kakashi did do a number on you. I guess around 2 weeks. Zabuza shut his eyes. Then we wait, he said as Haku helped him back to their base. The air was tense at the Tazuna household. After they had arrived, Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter, had led both teams to separate rooms, before going to make dinner. Darui and his team had gotten the talk with Tazuna, who told them the story of Nami's current depression, and the impact the bridge would have. He spoke of how Gato, of the Gato Company, was in control of a majority of businesses and crime in the country, due to his monopoly at the docks. After hearing the story, Naruto could not hold it against him for lying about the mission. He was doing what was best for his village. Darui had gone to talk to Kakashi about their current predicament, while the genin teams would wait in the house. Both sides were on the opposite sides of the living room, some having a glaring match, while others held a passive distaste. Sasuke was still brooding about Naruto's insult, and had his black eyes targeted on him. Sakura was switching between fawning over Sasuke and watching the Kumo Kunoichi. Whether it was for being a threat to the mission, or for Sasuke, no one could tell. Kiba and Akamaru were openly growling at the other team. Kiba actually had his hand on his pouch, that would twitch every so often towards a kunai. Yugito was pretending to look at her nails, while both of her teammates could tell she was thinking of a way to stop that pink-haired girl from staring. Isamu just sighed and looked at the door, waiting for Darui and Kakashi to return, and Naruto gave a bored stare up at the ceiling. Naruto could feel both of the male teammates' eyes on him, so he decided to end it. Would you please stop staring? I don't go that way, though I appreciate that you think that I am attractive, he said, grinning a bit under his mask as he saw the Uchiha's fists ball. Sasuke-kun is not gay, yelled Sakura. Shinoru, he is definitely not gay. How dare they insult him? He should go and kick there, yelled inner Sakura. Kiba gave a louder growl, causing Naruto to look at him. And what is your problem? He asked politely. What is my problem? He asked as he moved a bit closer. You guys are a mess of bad problems. First, you come and try and kidnap Hinata, then you demand her father's head as a compensation for the loss of your head ninja. He yelled a bit louder, making Akamaru yip in approval. Isamu turned to him. Hinata, as in the Hyuga Hinata, heiress of the Hyuga clan? He asked, gaining a nod from Kiba. Isamu nodded, before turning back to the door. Though I agree that the kidnapping was not the best idea, do not go placing Konoha on a pillar. A lot of sacrifice is needed to gain and maintain power. Yugito nodded. Even we know of the bird cage seal that the main house puts on the branch house. Not only does it stop the Byakugan from leaving Konoha, but also can be used to ensure loyalty to the main house. Yeah, but at least we don't go around stealing bloodlines, said Sakura with a triumphant smirk. Yugito scowled. We don't massacre our clans, she said, making Sasuke glare. We don't demand heads as compensation, he said, making Yugito, and even Isamu, narrow their eyes. Darui and Kakashi had walked back into the room, and had heard most of the argument. We don't mistake a child for a giant fox, said Naruto, beginning to glare at the other team. Sasuke scoffed. Sakura took a step back from the glare, and Kiba looked ashamed. Kakashi looked visibly saddened. Yugito's gaze softened on Naruto, but then turned towards Team 7 with unmasked hatred. Why would you care? Asked Sakura, but Naruto just ignored her. Well, now that that is out of the way, Darui said, we have decided that our teams will be working together on this mission. Any questions? Team 33 said nothing, but Sasuke, on the other hand, asked, why do we have to work with these weaklings? Kakashi sighed. Running into Zabuza is a problem, and we are going to need more help to deal with him. But Kakashi-sensei, Zabuza is dead, that hunter Nin killed him, said Sakura, pointing out the obvious. That wouldn't be the case, said Isamu, my clan is part of the hunter corps of Kumo. Senbons are an unusual weapon for hunter Nin, they are used more to delay, rather than to kill. Furthermore, rather than destroying the body on sight, which is normal procedure, he took it away. Kakashi nodded. Correct, that is also the reason that we will be training for the next 2 weeks. It will probably take that long for him to recover. Now that you know that we are working together, why don't we get to know each other? My name is Kakashi Hatake, he finished with an eye smile. Sakura scowled. Sakura Haruno, she said. Kiba Inuzuka, and this is my partner, Akamaru, said Kiba, still hurt by the demon comment. Sasuke gave a smirk. Uchiha Sasuke, he said pompously. Yugito crossed her arms. Ni Yugito. Sho Isamu, Isamu said curtly. Naruto looked at Darui, who nodded. He looked back to the group and took a deep breath. Removing his hood, and his mask, Uzumaki Naruto, he announced. Complete silence had captured the room. Not a single person dared to speak. Kiba stared slack-jawed at the sun-kissed blonde, his eyes almost bulging out of his skull. Sasuke's eyes were widened in shock, and maybe excitement. Sakura was now visibly shaking, her skin had become pale and she was staring in fear at Naruto. However, none of these reactions could compete with what Kakashi was going through. Kakashi's former composure as a Jonin of Konoha had disappeared the moment Naruto had said his name. His one visible eye was widened in a mix of shock, confusion, and happiness. When he had first seen the hood fall, the wild, spiky hair had triggered a thought of his late sensei and son, but when the mask fell, the 3 whisker marks on each chin resembled the one and only Uzumaki Naruto. Praying that this was not a trick, he flipped his Hitai-8 to show his coveted Sharingan eye. The Kumo team stiffened. Darui coiled back, ready to strike. Isamu placed his hand on his kunai pouch, and Yugito was ready to pounce, with 2 kunai in each hand. Kakashi paid no attention to this though, and just looked at Naruto. His eye assured it, there was no genjutsu placed, or henge disguise. This was the real Uzumaki Naruto. Seeing that there was no more need for his eye, and that it was causing complications, Kakashi recovered his eye. Naruto's team relaxed slightly, but kept in their positions. It's really you, said Kakashi softly. He tried to take a step forward, but was stopped when he felt a firm grip on his shoulder. He turned to see Darui, who had a tired glare. I suggest that you keep your distance, Kakashi-san. Considering Naruto's history with your village. Kakashi nodded, while on the inside he was fuming. Here was Naruto, one of his only ways of repaying his dead sensei for all of his kindness, and he was again stopped by another obstacle. First it was Naruto's supposed death, and now it was his status as a Kumo nin. Sasuke, who had overcome his previous shock, gave Naruto a glare. Impossible, the Konoha demon died by the hands of 2 Chunin, he stated. Yugito and Isamu narrowed their eyes at the Konoha demon comment, but Naruto just sighed. It is quite possible, and it was not only 2 Chunin, they only used a Kaden on me, the mob did the rest, he said, gaining the attention of Kakashi, making a note to ask him what he meant by that. But still, what are we waiting for? Yelled Sakura. Whether he is alive or not is not the problem. We have to kill him now before he guts us all. Team 33, and to Naruto's surprise, Kakashi moved in front of him. Yugito even went as far to get in close to the pink-haired girl, to hold a kunai to her neck. Just you try, bitch, she said coldly, pressing the blade deeper into her neck, making Sakura shiver. Yugito, don't harm the Konoha nin, said Darui, lowering his weapon, it wouldn't bode well to kill another village's shinobi. Yugito gave her sensei a look, then turned back to Sakura with a frightening glare, before lowering her kunai. The room relaxed a bit, but the air was still hostile. So Naruto, said Kakashi, sending a small glare at Darui, how did you end up as a Kumo shinobi? Naruto looked up at the ceiling. Well, after I was left to die by the villagers, he said, before looking back at Kakashi, a man came and found me. He took me away from the area and treated my wounds. I told him about my life in Konoha, and he told me why I was hated. Kakashi cringed at the last part. After that, he offered to teach me the ways of the shinobi, and I traveled with him for a couple of years, before coming to Kumo last year to join the academy. Naruto finished, acting as if he was talking about the weather. Kakashi wanted to ask more, but just then Tsunami walked into the room. Dinner's ready, she said happily, completely unaware of the tension in the room. Isamu was the first to get up and walk to the kitchen. He turned to face his teammates, and Team 7, despite our feelings about each other, we should push them to the side for now. It would not be beneficial to hate your comrades, he said, specifically looking at Naruto on the last one. Darui sighed, and sheathed his sword. You are right, Isamu, and tomorrow we will be doing group training in the morning, to get a feeling of how the others fight. Then one team will guard the bridge builder, while the others do their own training, he said, to which all of his team nodded. Kakashi looked at his team, and begrudgingly, they nodded as well. They all then moved towards the kitchen. Dinner was kind of awkward. Yugito and Isamu had snatched the seats near Naruto, while Sakura, Sasuke, and Kiba had taken the seats on the opposite side. Kakashi and Darui sat at the corners of the table, and Tazuna, Tsunami, and her son, Inari, sat at the other end, watching with curiosity as the ninja ate. Sasuke would go from silently brooding, to giving a glare at Naruto, which he cleverly ignored. Sakura would switch from fawning over Sasuke, glaring at Yugito, who returned her glares in equal vigor, to giving fearful glances at Naruto. Kiba's expression was hard to read, but it could easily be placed between anger and confusion. Isamu just ate, not really paying attention to the other occupants, but he would scan the room every so often for trouble. Naruto acted like everything was normal, as if the Konoha team was not even there. He complimented Tsunami on her cooking, talked with his teammates, and even gave Akamaru some of his dish, instantly winning over the small dog. But every time he grinned, Isamu, Yugito, Darui, and Kakashi could tell that it was forced. After dinner, the two teams split up into two rooms. At first it was going to be boys in one, girls in another, but Yugito threw a fit about being in a room with the pink-haired banshee, and they decided to just sleep with their teams. Naruto was currently unsealing his sleeping gear, when he felt a presence behind him. He turned and saw Isamu looking at him with a somber look. I am sorry I had to put you on the spot like that, he said, sincerely sorry. I saw the way you were looking at them, and it would not have been the best if you attacked one of them. Naruto nodded, but said nothing. Being a Kumo shinobi is a double-edged sword, Isamu continued, noticing Naruto was listening. Though you are protected from Konoha taking you back, you also represent Kumo. Attacking them could prove disastrous. Naruto got up and looked at Isamu with a smile. I knew why you did it and I thank you for it. I needed that to put me back in my place. I am no longer a part of Konoha, but a part of Kumo, he said. Isamu gave a small smile, and held out his fist, which Naruto quickly fist bumped. After they were all prepared, Team 33 fell asleep, with Yugito inching closer and closer to Naruto. None of them noticed Darui slip out of the room. Darui was currently waiting in the forest behind the house. The moon was high and illuminated the forest floor. The wind made the leaves bristle, and the rhythmic pattern of the water sloshing against the dock was relaxing. All in all, it was a nice night. Just then, Kakashi appeared out of the shadows. So you came? He asked, to which Darui just shrugged. If I didn't, you probably would have come and dragged me out here, he said. Kakashi nodded. Then let's get right to business, he said as he began to glare at Darui. Why is Naruto a Kumo nin? Darui just looked up at the stars, because he wanted to be, was his simple answer. Kakashi's eyes narrowed a bit more. What is that supposed to mean? He asked. Darui moved his gaze back to Kakashi. Exactly what I said. Naruto wanted to come to Kumo. From my knowledge, Naruto was found beaten, stabbed, and crucified nearly 4 miles from your village. Do you really think he would want to protect the people who tortured him? He said, though in a slightly angered tone. This isn't all about what he wants, said Kakashi. Naruto belongs in Konoha, with his family. And who might that be? Darui asked. The Sandaime. Yes, he did a great job protecting him before. Kakashi cringed at the sarcasm in his voice. The Ichirakus, Darui continued, sure they care about him, but it would be hard for those 3 people to make up for an entire village that hates you. He wouldn't be alone, said Kakashi. He would have me, Asuma, Kurenai, Guy, his voice faded as he failed to come up with any more people that cared about him. That is a very short list, said Darui, plus this sounds like you are doing this for you rather than for Naruto. Or maybe is it also that Konoha wants their precious weapon back? Kakashi's eyes widened. How did you know that he is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko? Darui finished, interrupting Kakashi's question. Easy to tell when he heals from second-degree burns in an hour. Darui turned to start walking away. From any angle you look at it, Naruto is a Kumo shinobi. But if you even try to steal him back, Darui looked back at Kakashi, his eyes ice cold, I will kill you. He then turned and began walking away, leaving Kakashi in a dejected state. Darui hated seeing such a revered shinobi like this, and he knew it would be better for an alliance if Naruto got along with some of Konoha's elites. Naruto doesn't hate Konoha, Darui said, catching Kakashi's attention, he just dislikes the people there. But if you were to build a bond with him, Naruto might still dislike most of Konoha, but will consider you a friend. With that, Darui vanished, leaving Kakashi deep in thought. I may not be able to bring Naruto back, thought Kakashi, as he balled his fists, but I will try my hardest to become a part of his life. With this new determination in mind, Kakashi walked back to his room. Sensei, I will not abandon your son. The following morning, after Tsunami had made both teams a large breakfast, the Kumo and Konoha nin were in the forest. Kakashi had recommended a spar to learn how the others fight. Darui did not want to agree to this, at threat of making his team's abilities known, but agreed, because of 3 reasons. 1. The spar would only utilize taijutsu, and his team could afford to show off some of their skill. 2. This really would help their team dynamic. And 3. Naruto needed to let out some steam, and the Konoha shinobi would be the perfect targets. Alright, who is up first? Kakashi asked. He looked at the group of young genin, before pointing at Kiba and Isamu. You two look ready. Kiba pumped his fist up in the air. Hell yeah, come on Akamaru, let's show these Kumo nin why Konoha is number 1. Akamaru gave a happy yip. Isamu just sighed and began walking over to his side, but was stopped when Naruto put his hand on Isamu's shoulder. Don't hurt him too much, we need him for the mission, he said with a small smile, which Isamu returned, before continuing his walk to the center of the field. Kakashi had watched the small display of friendship, and he had to admit that it felt good to know that Naruto had found some sort of friendship. And maybe something more, he thought, as he spied Yugito staring at Naruto's behind, before blushing, and turning away. Kakashi had to stiffen a perverted giggle, he would have to tell Jiraiya about this. Alright, you remember the rules, only taijutsu, said Darui, who was proctoring the match, Hajime. Kiba instantly got into his 4-leg stance, while Isamu just put his foot back. Kiba, seeing this as a sign of weakness, charged forwards, trying to end the match with a kick to the head. At the last second, Isamu moved out of the way. Kiba flew over him but quickly recovered with a handstand, before twisting his body so he was on all fours again. This continued for a while. Kiba would attack Isamu, but at the last moment he would dodge. Akamaru, who was told to sit out the round, watched with a mix of whines and growls, as Isamu played with his comrade. Yugito and Naruto wanted to laugh. It was easy to see Isamu's strategy, learn as much as he could from the opponent, and then when they were tired, come in with a finishing blow. Kiba was getting frustrated. Why won't you stay still, coward? He yelled as he charged Isamu again. Isamu said nothing, and continued to stay out of the dog's reach. Breathing heavily, Kiba glared at Isamu, who finally decided to say something. Why are you so adamant on beating me? Because you were the ones who tried to kidnap Hinata, he said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. And why are you trying to protect Hinata? Isamu asked, as he dodged another strike. Because she's my friend. Kiba swung a punch. Isamu gave a teasing smile. The rise in your pheromone levels tell me that you want her to be something more. Kiba stopped attacking and stared wide-eyed at Isamu, who continued to talk. If this is true, why haven't you talked to her? Is it because she is with someone else, or are you just too scared that she will reject you? So tell me, who is the real coward here? Kiba was now shaking in rage. He charged blindly at Isamu, who just stood and waited. When he got close, Isamu, under his outstretched arm, twisted it behind his back, and proceeded to give 2 hard punches into Kiba's kidneys. Kiba's knees buckled after the 2 hits, his body only being held up by Isamu's grip on his arm. And you're dead, Isamu said nonchalantly, dropping Kiba on the ground. Never let your emotions get the better of you, or you will die, Isamu said as he walked back to his team. Winner, Isamu, Darui said, proud about how his student had handled that. Kakashi was now helping a limping Kiba to the sidelines, where Akamaru was yipping worriedly. Wow, I never knew you could be so cruel, Isamu, said Yugito, still surprised about how quickly her kind teammate had turned into a ruthless fighter. Isamu just shrugged. I save it for my opponents, he said, sitting next to Naruto. Naruto just grinned and placed an arm around Isamu. Don't worry, Yugi-chan, Isamu is our friend, and would never be that cruel to us. Isamu gave a small smile. Yes, we are comrades and friends, and I would never let either of you get harmed, if I could do something to stop it. So if we were starving and out of money, you would buy us ramen and sushi, asked Yugito hopefully. Isamu rolled his eyes. Does it look like I could afford that much food? If you could eat sushi whenever you wanted, the world would have a fish shortage. Yugito turned away and pouted, while Naruto laughed. After Kakashi was finished tending to Kiba, he looked at the remaining genin. How about we have our 2 kunoichi next, he said with an eye smile. Yugito and Sakura got on opposite sides of each other, each glaring daggers at the other. Darui looked at both kunoichi, making sure they were ready, before slicing down his hand and yelling, Hajime. Yugito, wasting no time, rushed at her opponent. Sakura, seeing her coming, jumped to the right to avoid the punch. However, Yugito had anticipated this, and at the last moment, pushed her left foot against the ground, propelling her at Sakura with a strong right hook. Taken off guard by her attack, Sakura was punched into a nearby tree. As she struggled to stand up, Yugito appeared next to her, punching her into the tree again, before finishing up with a roundhouse kick. Sakura's breath was taken away by the first punch, and the kick to the head knocked her out. Winner, Yugito, said Darui, as Yugito smirked, and walked back to Naruto and Isamu. You know, the reason we are doing this spar is because we want to learn about our temporary teammates. You can't really do that when you knock your opponent out in less than a minute, said Isamu. Yugito just snorted. I did learn something, that she can't fight. And plus, that was payback for staring at me all yesterday. Naruto laughed at his teammates' bickering, before getting up and stretching. Well, I guess it is my turn. Sasuke was already waiting on the field, looking angry and depressed as always. He smirked when he saw Naruto walk onto the field. Why don't you give up right now? There is no way you can stand up to an Uchiha, he taunted. Naruto smirked right back. I thought you needed the Sharingan to be an Uchiha. Sasuke gritted his teeth at Naruto, before getting in the Uchiha clan stance. Bring it on, demon. Right back at you, Susuge, said Naruto, adopting the traditional stance of the Kitsune no Sutairu. As soon as Darui said, Hajime, both boys jumped at each other. Sasuke punched at Naruto's abdomen, but he just twisted out of the way, and aimed a punch at Sasuke's head. Sasuke then brought his knee up to Naruto's chin. Naruto's head was shot up, but he used the momentum of the attack to speed up his kick on Sasuke's head, this time hitting him. Naruto landed on his feet, and Sasuke did some flips in mid-air, before landing gracefully on his feet. Sasuke smirked at Naruto. You're better than I thought, maybe this will be a challenge. Naruto ignored him and began to charge. Sasuke got ready to intercept another punch to the head, but was surprised when Naruto's punch went right by his head, and pulled him into a hard hit with Naruto's knee. Still a bit dazed, Naruto continued to land heavy punches on his torso, and every time the daze would end, Naruto would send another punch at his temples. Around the fourth time Naruto had done this, he said to the staggering Sasuke, "I think it is about time I ended this." Naruto brought both of his fists into Sasuke's ears, before aiming a kick at his throat. Sasuke was knocked down, coughing heavily. He was about to try and get up, but felt a foot on his face. "Stand down," said Naruto in a cold voice. Sasuke glared up at him, before smirking. "Uchiha never back down," he said, before punching right into Naruto's crotch. All of the men on the sidelines cringed, while Yugito was livid. How dare that emo punch Naruto-kun in the balls? "Oh, he will be in for hell," thought Yugito as Nibi nodded. "I agree, kitten, he should have known that that area is ours. After the spar, you should go kiss it to make it better." Yugito ignored the perverted cat in her stomach and continued to watch the match. Naruto staggered back, his hands cradling his balls. Pain, 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 he thought over and over. Kyuubi could only agree. What the Uchiha did was a move. Sasuke had gotten up now, and was smirking up a storm. "We are ninja, we never play fair," he said. Naruto just glared at him. "I knew you were gay. No other straight man would willingly get in close to another man's nuts." Sasuke was about to charge him, when he felt a hand on his shoulder. Kakashi gave him a lazy stare. "I think that we are done with the spars for today," he said, making Sasuke give a snort, and walk back to his team. Darui could only nod as he went to check on his student. Sakura, who had woken up during the fight, ran over to check on her beloved, and Kiba was protecting his own pair, just in case Sasuke got angry. Yugito had given Naruto an ice pack from her pouch, and Isamu had an angry expression on his face. After the pain had subsided, Naruto gave Yugito a thankful gaze. "Thanks for the ice pack," he said. Yugito blushed a bit. "We are on a team, we look out for each other." She then looked at Sasuke with a glare. "And I am also your friend, so I am going to get him back." Naruto put a hand on Yugito's shoulder, drawing her attention back to him. "Don't, I already have a plan," he said with a mischievous grin, which Yugito soon matched. Kakashi then walked over to the Kumo team. He looked at Naruto. "How's the pair?" Naruto just shrugged. "Getting better, but you should teach Sasuke about not touching other men's private areas." Kakashi chuckled a bit, and rubbed the back of his head. He then looked at Darui. "It looks like my team will need a lot of training. So do you mind taking the first watch of Tazuna?" Darui nodded and called his team to follow him. Kakashi then turned to focus on his team. "Well, it looks like we have a lot of work to do," he said in a false, cheery voice. He turned to Kiba. "Kiba, while you may be good at taijutsu, it won't matter if your emotions get in the way." Kiba looked down, and Akamaru had his tail between his legs. Kakashi then turned to Sakura. "Sakura, have you done any training at all since you left the academy?" When she didn't answer, he continued, "We will be doing a lot of taijutsu the next 2 weeks, so you better get your priorities in order." Sakura looked down, then at her crush for support, but when she didn't get any, she looked back at the ground. "And you, Sasuke," said Kakashi, turning to the rookie of the year, "if this was a real fight, you would have been dead. The only reason you got that cheap shot was because Naruto had decided that it was over. If we were fighting Zabuza right now, you wouldn't be here talking." Sasuke scoffed and looked out towards the direction that the Kumo nins have gone. "Now we are going to start our training, and believe me, I will not be going easy on you," said Kakashi, with a sadistic spark in his lone eye. The 3 genin shivered. "Wow, they sucked," yelled Yugito, when they were a far enough distance away. Isamu could only nod in agreement. "Are they really the genin of the strongest of the 5 nations?" he asked Darui, who ignored the question. As Naruto, Yugito, and Isamu turned to walk towards the house, they saw Darui walking in another direction. Darui-sensei, I thought we were guarding Tazuna today, asked Yugito. Darui shook his head. Zabuza won't attack so soon, he must still be healing. So we will send Raiden Bushinans to guard Tazuna, who should be able to handle guarding him. Team 33 looked at each other, before nodding, creating the Bushins, and following their sensei into the forest. After a few minutes of walking, Darui turned around. Since we are going to be fighting Zabuza this mission, I feel it is important to help you learn some new jutsus. Yugito and Naruto were now instantly interested. Darui pulled out a small scroll. Isamu, since you have the lowest amount of chakra in the group, and your affinity is earth, you would be reliable support in a fight. That is why I am going to help you learn the Doden. Doryuheiki, said Darui, tossing the scroll to Isamu. Isamu wasn't hurt about having the least amount of chakra, it was hard to compare to two Jinchuriki and an elite Jonin. Yugito, you seem to be an excellent candidate for learning the Kaden, Karyuden. It is a jutsu that can be used to support or to attack head-on, said Darui as he tossed a scroll to Yugito. She was so excited that she quickly moved away from the group, and began reading the scroll. Darui then pulled out a red scroll, and for you, Naruto, I am basically giving back what is already yours, said Darui, gaining a confused look from Naruto. This is one of the jutsu scrolls that Kumo scavenged from Uzushiogakure. Due to their sealing promise, every scroll we got were outfitted with blood seals, so no one could read them. But seeing as you are an Uzumaki, the scroll is rightfully yours, and Kumo would be better off having you learn them. Naruto took the scroll like it was made of glass. He could see the whirlpool symbol on the sides, and bowed to Darui, who waved it off. Naruto then moved off into the corner of the open field, and bit his thumb. As blood began to flow from the cut, he swiped it over the seal. There was a quiet click, and then the scroll began to unravel. The Kage Bushinin no Jutsu, he thought, and began to read over the scroll for the next hour. This continued for a week. The two teams would do team training in the morning, followed by one team guarding Tazuna, while the others would train. The first week, after Naruto had learned the Kage Bushinin no Jutsu in a couple of hours, the team had sent hanged Bushinans to guard Tazuna, rather than themselves, and use the time to train. The two teams' teamwork had only made slight progress. Kiba had decided to give the Kumo Nin a chance, and tried to socialize with them. After seeing the way that Naruto had treated Akamaru, he knew that he could not be a demon like the villagers called him. The two really hit it off, but Naruto still felt wary near Sakura and Sasuke. Sakura, he had found out, was the daughter of the woman who had led the mob against him all those years ago. She had been fed the lies from her mother, and was hard-pressed on sticking to them. When Yugito found out about this, she had to be held back by both Naruto and Isamu from killing the pink-haired girl. All Sasuke did was glare at Naruto, making snide comments whenever he could. Naruto would always have a comeback though, so Sasuke was always the one who lost his temper. Kakashi was very nice in Naruto's opinion. He had pulled Naruto aside one day to ask for his forgiveness in not protecting him better, which Naruto waved off. He said that Kakashi had the same hairstyle as the Inu masked Anbu, who would take him to the hospital, so he knew that he was someone that he could trust. Both teams were eating dinner as usual, with Tsunami, Tazuna, and Inari, who just kept looking down at his food. So Darui-san, how is your team's training going? Asked Kakashi. It's alright, said Darui, not really wanting to give away how much his team had progressed. Ours is going great. We will be able to kick Zabuza Thames in no time, yelled Kiba, getting a bark of agreement from Akamaru. Why do you try? Inari said in a low voice, before looking up, you're just going to die. The whole table froze and looked at him. Kiba was growling, Sasuke was glaring, and Tazuna and Tsunami were giving somber looks to Inari. We will defeat Zabuza, and Gato, said Naruto, conviction evident in his voice. If you believe that, then you are a fool, yelled Inari. Anyone who believes that they can beat Gato is a fool. Naruto just stared at Inari, his will unchanged. We will defeat Zabuza and Gato, he said again. No, you won't, yelled Inari, tears starting to fall from his eyes. You think that you understand us. You don't know pain. You have lived your whole life protected in a ninja village. There is no way you could understand. He was interrupted by Naruto slamming his fist into the table. You think that I do not know pain? He asked. For the first 6 years of my life, I was beaten, abused, and almost starved. I had no family, no friends, it was just me against them. He then looked down, and after I left, a few years later I met a woman. She agreed to help me train my kenjutsu, as long as I would pay for her meals, he said, his hair now covering his eyes. In the month I knew her, we became very close. I even started to call her Nei-chan. Naruto gave a dry chuckle, but then one day, she told me that she was dying, that I could not do anything to stop it. Yugito was listening intently. She had never heard this story. Kakashi was listening to hear about how Naruto's life was outside of the village. She died in my arms, and I could do nothing to stop it, said Naruto. So when you think that we don't understand pain, he was now looking at Inari with fire in his eyes. Remember that you still have a mother and grandfather who love you, while other people have had it a lot worse. So stop being a crybaby and stand up for yourself. Inari ran crying from the room, and Naruto began walking to the door. I'm not hungry anymore, I'll be outside training. Yugito tried to get up to follow him, but was stopped when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Kakashi looking at her. Let him go, he said, he needs to let out some steam. Kakashi then went after Inari, to talk to the kid about what had happened.